This is the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom show, the Wake Up Call on WCOM LP, Chapel Hill and Carborough, 103.5 on your FM dial, or live streaming at WCOMFM.org. You can also watch this show on the People's Channel after a week's delay on Thursday night at 10 p.m., Friday morning at 6 a.m., or Tuesday at noon. The show will also be available on our YouTube channel, Wilf Wake Up Call. I'm Iris Schwinzer here with our host, Lori Hoyt, and Emily O'Hare on the camera. Today, our special guests are Sammy Quiroz-Gutierrez, Liv Hutchby, and Emily Key.
Thanks, Iris. The theme of our show today is going to be the climate crisis, and we're going to be talking about a big protest that's coming up. But before we get started, there's something that certainly is connected with the climate, and that is today is 9/11. And this is a significant anniversary. I'm sure we could take a moment of silence. Being on the radio, it will only be a moment, but I know that this is what's in all of our hearts today, and I know many people are reliving certain traumas and memories from that day. And this is certainly linked also to our climate crisis today. 9/11 was such a tragedy for our country, and a lot of the responders are still suffering. Many of them have cancer. There's been brought up in Congress to keep renewing medical monies for help for these responders, many of whom have enduring a lifetime of pain because of their going to help in that emergency. And also the planet suffering from that. Not only those buildings that came down and all the chemicals and asbestos that was released, that not only the responders but a lot of New York people who live close by are still suffering effects from it. But as a consequence of that tragedy, we embarked on some wars of retribution. The Afghan war has been going on for 18 years. The next year we invaded Iraq, and the consequences of that are still going on through many countries in the Mideast. Last I heard, we've been bombing in 22 countries. And that does connect with the climate. All those bombs, all those planes in the air, all the emissions, all the chemicals, all the fires that military installations do to burn their rubble when they're leaving, all of this has accelerated. The climate was already moving in a very bad direction, but all of this war, munitions, and instruments of war and death have accelerated the climate problems we already had. So I guess we all know that the planet is in dire trouble right now, and we're going to be talking about that. And I'm going to turn it over about not only the problems we're having and the scariness, but some things that we can do. And that's what's so important, not only to be sad, not only to grieve, but then roll up our sleeves as Americans, hopefully are still want to do, and say, okay, what can we do to make it better? And we're going to start off with Emily Keel. And Emily, you can start telling us some of how we can get, what's going on to tell.
Thank you, Lori. We're in the midst of a global climate crisis, there's no doubt. The UN has said that we have just 11 years left to avert a climate catastrophe. The International Panel on Climate has said that we have 11 more years to cut emissions in half, and we will be in true disaster in 20 years. It may come in various forms, but it certainly will engulf the entire Earth. Since we began to burn the enormous amounts of coal and oil and gas, we've changed the atmosphere considerably of the entire Earth. That change is causing record heat. This past July was the hottest month ever recorded anywhere, ever. and it was the 415th straight month warmer than the average months in the 20th century. Europe baked this summer with 109 Fahrenheit temp in Paris, while the ice in Greenland and Arctic ice melted at record paces. People are migrating out of their countries and seeking refuge in others to escape the drought and their lack of food and water. We are witnessing now some incredible thing, though. We're here to talk about a specific event, which is the climate strike that will be international on beginning on September 20th. And this came about due to efforts of young people primarily, people that see their future as non-existent, really. So they're grabbing our attention, and this started perhaps probably with a young lady from Sweden, Greta Thunberg, who at the age of 15 she said this was cognitive dissonance for her. She views things in black and white. So if people are saying that the earth as we know it is going to end if we continue to have such emissions, then we should stop having the emissions. She couldn't understand why everyone wasn't acting on that. So her action was to skip school for 3 weeks and sit at the parliament in Sweden with a sign that says "School Strike for Climate." She did it for 3 weeks, then she stopped. She's now on sabbatical from school, and she protests every Friday wherever she is. She's confronted us adults with the idea that youth really, since adults have broken the social contract with youth for a future that is predictable and safe, then they have no contract with us for attending school and learning things that are completely irrelevant. So her school strike is spread to a lot of other places, and the first global school strike was on March of this year, and it included 1.6 million people. There were over 2,000 strikes in 125 countries on that single day. Now again, the youth are calling on us to do an international strike. They hope to force business as usual to come to a halt and have everyone listen to this deadly message. We're not going to survive without making monumental changes in our lives. And it's inconvenient to do this, right? Greta says things that make so much sense. She's motivated tremendous numbers of other youth, and she herself has become a target, actually, for some adult bullies who don't know of any other way to try to silence her. Her message is simple, though, and that is listen to the science. She is only asking people to listen to that. She doesn't feel that she has answers. She's just saying, you must listen to the science. She came actually to the U.S. Maybe a week ago now from Europe to attend a UN climate meeting on September 23rd and to participate in the strikes that began on September 20th. And she did that by sailboat because she does not fly. That would be such an expenditure of energy. She does not fly. So she came on a racing sailboat, took 15 days, and it was very inconvenient. She'll be leading the youth strike in New York, and many other youth have committed themselves to the leadership we need them to hold. She hopes on September 20th to have a social tipping point where people will see the urgency and cannot look away anymore. World leaders should take responsibility and do what they need to do. She makes complete sense out of what is but it's hard to convince us to act. But she has said that we are destroying the atmosphere, and we hold her future in our hands. 200 species are going extinct daily, which is just phenomenal. The insect populations that we depend on for food are becoming extinct at a rapid amount, and phytoplankton populations becoming extinct. We depend on them for oxygen. So we are being threatened by drought and wildfires and floods and famine, and facing an existential crisis. She has said we must hold adults responsible, wake up the adults, hold them accountable. We need to get everyone angry and turn the anger, transforming into action. Never give up. The climate defeatism is as dangerous a subject as climate denialism. So, we have one of the youth groups with us today, one of the very active national, it's not international, Sunrise Movement is a national movement in this country, somewhat similar to some of the other European movements. And there have been a number of movements, youth-led, that have sprung up And we are very dependent upon them to lead us at this time because we adults seem to be unable to act. So,
At least not in sufficient numbers and
Yes.
sufficient seriousness.
yes.
So Sammy is is at our show, and you are connected with the Sunrise Movement.
I am, yes, thank you so
Come
much.
tell us
for having me.
about it. You can get the microphone
Yeah.
close to you, yeah.
I'm from the Sunrise Movement, specifically the hub in Chapel Hill, but the larger Sunrise Movement, the national movement, basically we're a movement to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process, and our vehicle for doing that is the Green New Deal, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. But basically, the Sunrise Movement, we strive to elect officials who are going to stand up to fossil fuel executives and protect the interests of the people and protect the future of younger generations like myself and all of the other young people from Sunrise.
Good. So, yeah, and you know, I think part of where the adults are trying to ignore the young people is because they can't vote yet. But some of them are approaching 18, some of them are already 18. And my hope is that all these young people have parents and know some adults. So if they can prevail on the adults in their family, that maybe when the fossil fuel people and the politicians put two and two together and recognize that, they may start getting a little bit more backbone, I hope.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you're able to come because that's so exciting. And I think the Sunrise Movement, haven't they put a court case against trying to sue the U.S. government?
I'm not sure if the Sunrise Movement is affiliated with that, but we've been a movement that has in large part put the Green New Deal on the map and really turned the focus for the upcoming 2020 election onto climate change. And in a sense, the grassroots organizing that Sunrise across the country has been doing has been a large part of the fact that why politicians in the upcoming election, all the Democratic frontrunners, are releasing plans on climate. It's become an issue now that we can't ignore it, and that's, I think, in a large part due to all the organizing done from different climate groups, young people across the country, because in 2016, climate change wasn't something that people talked about.
And that's what's so, when you look back on that, they have figured out that with all the hours of discussion with politicians to try to get elected, I think it was maybe like 6 minutes of talk about the climate. It's just outrageous when you look back and hear what the data is on that. And even now, a lot of people are still trying to minimize and not mention it, although I will say that some of the Democratic candidates have been doing pretty good. Liv, you are involved in some of the planning. We're talking about, we've been talking about what a serious crisis, what a serious problem we're all in, adults and young people, but particularly the young people face the consequences of all that's happening. Mm-hmm. And you're in the planning for something that we all can participate in.
We are very excited to announce, and probably some of you who are listening have already heard about the plans for the climate strike. So I will tell you in general that on Friday, that is in Raleigh specifically, there will be a climate strike rally starting at 12:30. It goes from 12:30 to 1:30. And
this is on the 20th.
That is the 20th of September. So there are other things planned. While I have your ear, I would like to shout out that even tomorrow in Raleigh there is an environmental management commission meeting that lasts from 9 o'clock in the morning to 5. And if any of you can go there, it's not directly connected to the climate strike, but it certainly is connected to the climate and what will happen to the UNC coal-fired plant. So
and where is that going to be?
That will be in Archdale Building, which is part of Halifax Mall. It's on South Saunders.
So it's going to be in Raleigh.
It's on Salisbury Street.
Mm-hmm.
But the rally is from 12:30 to 1:30, tomorrow afternoon.
12:30 tomorrow to 1:30?
Correct, 12:30 to 1:30 at the Artsville building.
Okay.
So let's get back to the climate strike specifically and say that, there are other things planned, and I understand there's some things planned in, Chapel Hill and in Pittsburgh, so maybe Emily knows more about that.
I would be happy to talk.
Yes, please do, because I do not know the times.
Okay,
But the one in Raleigh is actually 12:30 to 3:30, I think, at
Yes.
Halifax Mall on the 20th. Okay.
Yeah, and that's looking like it's going to be the biggest event in the state for the 20th Global Climate Strike Day. But as far as organizing, we are planning something on UNC's campus. I'm not sure, well, like Lib mentioned, there is the NC Division of Air Quality has approved for the UNC cogeneration plant to remain open. When 10 years ago, in 2010, the Chancellor of UNC promised that this plant that is on UNC's campus that's releasing harmful pollutants would be closed by 2020, but they failed to uphold that promise to the student body and the greater Chapel Hill community. And so we're organizing around that on Friday, September 20th, in alignment with the Global Climate Strike Day, but our specific demand is towards the North Carolina Division of Air Quality and the university, specifically to take action towards closing that plant and creating a just transition for those workers. But our action is a walkout for clean air on campus on September 20th at 10:30 a.m. Students, the Sunrise Movement on campus, as well as the Young Democratic Socialists, we're collaborating also with large organizations like the North Carolina Center for Biological Diversity to put on this action where we're hoping to really call on the UNC administration and really the greater student body to know that this plant even exists, because before, like 2 weeks ago, I didn't even know it was out there, and it's been for decades just releasing these pollutants into the air. And yeah, the significant part too is that the plant is located where the most concentrated pollutants are actually going over the South Campus area, which is historically housing for students of color. And so that's an issue that we're hoping to tackle and get the UNC administration to listen to the student body and protect our interests and the faculty members and Chapel Hill community members. So.
You might know that some people have been protesting Friday mornings about that for a couple of months now, in all this heat. And I can't take the heat as old as I am, but they have been, and it's right down the street. I live in a 40 apartment building with old people. And so we're just down the street from that coal plant and all the pollutants coming down. So that, yeah, and so this is, so for that, about the coal plant, that is gonna be on the 20th locally. For people who are working, there's gonna be a walkout at 10:30 a.m.
Yeah, we're calling on students, faculty members, community members to walk
People
out of
who are
work,
in class
to
or
walk out
at
of
work.
class and join us. We're meeting on Wilson Library steps and like the Polk Place, the quad on campus, and we'll be having some great speakers that are going to be sharing their experiences with the valuable information that we have to learn from them.
Okay, for anybody who is also in the community who can't get to Raleigh,
Yes.
this is something that you can go to locally, and it's certainly connected with the climate and the air. Liv, you were going to say?
Well, and the rumor has it that all of these people who are walking out at 10:30 will then join us in Raleigh at the Halifax Mall. And so she's shaking her head, yes.
So they're gonna go, so okay, let's, there's a lot going on, let's get our times straight. So the Halifax Mall, the main climate strike in Raleigh is gonna be at 12:30.
Correct.
Yes, until 3:30.
Until 3:30.
Somewhere in that vicinity, yeah.
And that's gonna be at Halifax Mall,
And
which is right up behind the legislature building.
Correct.
Okay, we spent a lot of time there with Moral Mondays with Reverend Barber, so we've learned our way. So, okay, so that's gonna be 12:30 for the main climate strike in Raleigh.
I can
Okay.
give you a few details about how that's gonna work if you wanna hear that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
There are gonna be 25 plus organizations that'll be tabling there, including our own Women's International League.
oh,
And probably
good.
Yeah,
Sunshine.
Sunrise will be there.
Sunrise, I'm sorry. So it starts at 12:30, there'll be speeches and singing from 12:30 to 1:15, 12:45 to 1:15. And then there's gonna be some participatory art, letter and poetry writing, there'll be a soapbox that people can get up on, and then there'll be at 2 to 2:30, there'll be a drumming, I believe, and a parade that includes visual art and a group photo. Paper Hand Puppets is gonna be providing some masks and costumes, so that's around 2 to 2:30, somewhere in that range. So it'll be quite a interesting event, I think, with art and speaking and
Yeah,
many people representing their organizations committed to climate change, committed to eradicating climate change. And I'll just say too that in this, they're participating, others participating throughout the world, or 2,500 different events. This is one of 2,500 worldwide events in 117 countries. There's some others
Wow.
in North Carolina going on that are smaller than this, but certainly join in any place that you can do that.
so this is really exciting. A lot of organizations, one of the big ones is 350.org, who's been out in the trenches for years and years and years, trying to warn us what's gonna happen if we let the particulate matter get to past 350. And I think we're well past it. I'm afraid I don't remember the statistic, or hope we're not, but we may be. And so, and then Sunrise and so all of it, 117 countries, that is wonderful. 2,500 different events, and I'm sure they don't even have all of them listed, because I think you said, Lib, that there may even be some other things in Chapel Hill that we just learned about, the one about coal, and Pittsburgh's having something, and so I think that the alarm has been sounded, and I think it's being answered. Maybe not enough, and maybe a little late, but it's being answered. That we're the alarm, and that we're gearing up for action.
So there are other events after the 20th.
Okay, so the 20th is the beginning.
That is, and then there's this whole week of strike. This is a climate strike week.
A sustained event.
Oh, okay. I
So-
didn't know that. Climate Strike Week. Better
So,
yet.
Yes, so I'd also like to take this opportunity to announce that there has been the planning and organization of what is called the Tri-State Pipeline Strike. Now, many of you know already about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the Mountain Valley Pipeline, and those are two proposed pipelines that come from West Virginia, and down into North Carolina, proposed even to go into South Carolina. So, thanks to Frack Free North Carolina, Clean Water North Carolina, many organizations in North Carolina have stepped up to participate in organizing with Virginians and West Virginians, so that on the 22nd of September,
And
you're
that
invited
would
to come
be,
to Bent Mountain.
that would be Sunday, the 22nd?
Yes. With the main rally being on the 23rd. So the rally we would invite you to come to is in Roanoke, Virginia. Actually, it's only 12 days away, so we have quite a bit to do. But we just want to sincerely invite you all to come to Virginia to participate in this rally. We will gather at 10 o'clock at the Wells Fargo Plaza. Actually, we're saying that we are reminding you that we will occupy that space. It is at 26 Salem Avenue in Roanoke, Virginia, on September 23rd, remember, starting at 10 o'clock. And if you go to the website for Clean Water for North Carolina, there will be a map, and we'll give you more details if you would like. Wells Fargo will be our target, because it is one of the top financial backers of the ACP and the MVP. And in case you didn't know already, SunTrust and BB&T are merging, and SunTrust has invested heavily as well in these two proposed pipelines.
So anybody
So
who
we
is a
encourage
member
you
of these banks, pay attention.
Yes, so we are encouraging you who have money in banks to divest from these specific banks, because you are investing in the destruction and not construction.
And while you have the money and are a customer of theirs, hopefully you may be listened to and go and start calling in the main offices and tell them how you think about it before you divest. Well, while you're still a customer, before you divest, go and say, I'm a customer and I found out that you're investing in this destructive pipeline, and if you don't do something about it, I'm going to take my money out. So, you know, you while you have it there, until you do divest, use it as leverage.
Thank you for saying that, Laura, because it is, it's tough, especially for people my age who have been working with the same bank for years and years.
Exactly.
That particular bank ends up being investing in these destructive activities. I think it's important for us to at least write letters or have a conference with the managers and those some way to let them know that we want them to divest.
Yes.
And invest in renewables and not to divest in fossil fuels. Anything you want to add to that?
I think we're just about to go to a station break, so everybody can catch your breath, think about things that you don't want to forget to say or mention, because we can go back over some of these dates and times, because there's a lot going on. And so we're going to take a station break, which we're required to by law.
This is Wolf's Wake Up Call on WCOM-LP, Chapelville and Carver, 103.5 FM. You can stream us live at WCOMFM.org.
So here we are on our favorite community radio station, and I was listening this morning to a program that's on every week called In Vivo, and it's all about the environment and technical things connected with saving energy. And they had a specialist on about water, and it was a very interesting program about the difficulty in keeping our water clean, and they were mentioning Pittsburgh and the Haw River, all of our local things. So I just want to recommend our radio station. There's some excellent programs on, as well as wonderful different kinds of music programs. I also have an announcement to make about something else. This is a very busy time for people who have want to do something to make the world better. Some of you may have been hearing in the news and on the radio about the problems in Kashmir. Kashmir has been there's been brutal violence by the Hindu nationalist government of India, the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, against the Kashmiri people. And they right now have a pretty nationalist right-wing government. Modi is the head, the Hindu head. And there's been a lot of suffering by the people. They've had a blackout of being able to even leave their homes to shop. It's been a pretty brutal time. So there's going to be a Kashmir Freedom Rally on this Sunday. We've been talking about the climate one on Friday the 20th, but this Sunday, September 15th, from 1 to 3 p.m. at the State Capitol Building, 1 East Edenton Street in Raleigh. Meet in front of the building by the steps, and it will protest the brutal violence by the Hindu nationalist government. This rally will invite Kashmiri community members who are cut off from their family members because of their ban from any kind of communication, or their friends in Kashmir. And we've been all hearing reports of horrible human rights abuses there. So, and any allies in the Black Freedom Movement, the Palestine Freedom Movement, anti-Islamophobia movement, and certainly activists like Wilf and the Raging Grannies, and just all community members are invited to come to show support for what it's a human rights terrible violations happening in Kashmir. So again, that's this Sunday, September 15th from 1 to 3 at the State Capitol Building. Okay, so we're going to get back to our main theme of the day, and I hope people are getting out their papers and pencil or pens or computers, because there's a lot, and we're going to be going over some of this again. So, because I think a lot of people are going to be wanting to go to this climate strike. I'm sure some people have heard about it, but I don't know if the media has had very much about it yet. It's not starting till the 20th, and so we may be one of the first you're hearing it from. So maybe we're having a scoop. I don't know, but we're glad to get the word out, because we just want to let people know we'll have a repeat program next week due to some technical things. We will not have our Wolf program next Wednesday, but there will be one of our repeat programs on, and then we'll be back on the following week on the 25th, I think that is. So this, we're a little early getting all this information out regarding the 20th. And so we're happy that to be getting this word out, because as I say, some people may not have heard much about it yet. So do get your papers and pencil, and we're going to go back over some of those times. And I think you started out the program, Emily, talking about the Swedish activist, young activist, Greta Thunberg. And if anybody gets Democracy Now! And the station carried her at 8 o'clock this morning, and the People's Channel carried her at 8 o'clock this morning. She had the whole program devoted to Greta, who, as you said earlier, she stopped letting her family or her use airplanes when she found out how heavy the emissions are from every plane ride. So when she went to the Polish conference on the climate, was it last year? She and her father went by train. It took 2 weeks going from Sweden to Poland. And so to get to this country, she could not take a train across the ocean. So some people helped her by letting her use, it's a racing yacht that uses sails and solar. So it's emission-free, 0 emissions. And it's a pretty small one crossing the Atlantic. I've seen pictures of them on the high sea, Amy's show this morning. And so they raced across the Atlantic in this emissions-free vehicle, sailboat, and got in New York about a week ago. And she is here to go to the UN conference on climate, which I guess will be around the 20th.
The 23rd is one meeting they're having, I think.
At the UN, and she's been invited to speak at the UN, and she was invited to speak at the Poland climate conference, and I think she's been invited to speak at some other ones too. I think she's been a rallying point for a lot of young people, and she said, you know, she suffers from Asperger, and she's in the spectrum of it, that she said she obsesses, she gets one thing and she can't let go of it. She really keeps her focus, and she said that's her power. She's very positive about what some people would say is a disability. She said, this is my power focus, and she has her focus on the climate and saving the planet. And by gosh, she won't let up on it. And she encourages all of us to get our focus as intense as we can get it, and to not give up, to keep going, to keep the climate protected as best we can.
Did she tell you, did she say on the Amy Goodman show that she will be in Washington DC this coming Friday?
I think she did,
In the
yes.
White House.
At the White House, she'll be
House.
protesting at the White, that's right, thank you for reminding me of that.
I wish
I
knew
got
what
carried away
time
with
they
the
were.
sailboat. But
Sailed away.
I was wishing I could be on that with it, it looks so much fun. Yes, she is gonna be this Friday for anybody who either can go to Washington or knows people
We
in
don't know
Washington.
what time.
It is gonna be a protest at the White House, and of all places, that is where it is badly needed. So,
That
yes,
would be great.
yes, that'll be great. And young people are joining forces with her, you know, she'll be speaking at many areas. I think she spoke with the Extinction folks. They're bigger in Europe than here, but there's a group started here in New York, and she spoke before the Extinction folks, and they are people who are taking civil disobedience, gluing themselves to something they're trying to prevent. So they're putting themselves, their health and their lives on the line. They did that in England and they're doing it here, and so she spoke to them too, yes.
She's had some memorable comments that I heard from Naomi Klein, interviewed by The Intercept, a video that's available online from The Intercept, and I would encourage anyone to look at that. It showed numbers of young climate activists.
Wonderful.
And Naomi Klein sort of hosted that and interviewed Greta. And Greta reported that the first speech that she gave, I may have been to the UN Climate Committee, and her father read it. He said, "You cannot say this. It will embarrass you. It will embarrass everyone. You cannot say this." So she took it out to calm her father, memorized it, and said it anyway. And she speaks very powerful truth that we all need to hear.
Yes,
So
she really called them to account in that, I think it was that speech that she got tearful, and
Yeah.
she keeps very calm and very good control, but this is something she feels so deeply about, and giving that talk about what's happening to the oceans, to the animals, to the birds. She got tearful, and it was very moving, very moving.
She's a great speaker and a great inspiration to definitely young organizers trying to organize around climate change. And the fact that she's only 15 and struggles with Asperger's and public speaking and things, like, we all need to have the courage that she does to be able to stick up for our lives, really, and start getting adults to treat this emergency like the crisis that we know it is. So.
She says she wants people to panic. Don't be calm, panic, because the house is on fire. And no one should just be calmly approaching this at all.
Yeah, and she's turned 16 now. She started a few years back. You know, she told about it on Amy's show before, and she said about this time that when she started finding out about the dire straits that the climate is in, and she used the word dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance, that finding out, and then nobody seemed to be doing enough or very much at all, and she went into a pretty deep depression and stopped eating, and it just got very hard for her. But finally, the way she snapped out of it was to say, "I just can't sit around here doing nothing, and I'm going to start doing what I can, even though I'm a very young person." And she said as she started doing something, she moved out of her depression. And she said the more she does, the better she feels. And I think that's so true. Whatever the issue, I've found, you know, just walking up and down my living room, gnashing my teeth does not make me feel better. But if you get out, and if it's just even a phone call, or going to a protest, you know, whatever you do, each step that you do something, it gives you a feeling of empowerment, and that at least you're not, in other words, I think she used the expression also, you know, don't talk the talk, walk the walk, you know, take the action, don't just think about it, and that was so it's a model for whatever we're gonna do about this world.
She's a powerful statement for the individual activist. I mean, if you think you're not gonna make any improvements doing your own thing, she certainly has shown that that is not true. I'm interested in how the Sunrise Movement got started in the U.S. Do you know the history of that? And how does it relate to Extinction
tell us
Rebellion?
about
And
it.
Sunrise Movement was started about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago maybe, by a handful of college students, college graduates, mid-20-somethings. They had mostly gotten to know each other through the divestment movement on their respective college campuses, divestment from fossil fuels. And they spent like an entire year before actually taking action, just reading up on the literature and the history of social movements and what makes them effective, how they can build the people power and strategize to really make Sunrise Movement the force that it needed to be. And of course, like, they didn't predict that it would look the way that it does now, but it was really after their sit-in in Nancy Pelosi's office. I believe it was at the beginning of this year, maybe last year at some point, but it really called attention to the movement, and that's when Sunrise Movement started to go viral and hubs started popping up all over the country, and now there are hundreds of hubs all over the country. Sunrise Movement has really gained traction, and they have like thousands of young people and older people too supporting them. But yeah, so it's great that they really didn't foresee the way that it could have taken off, and it's just incredible how it has. So.
yeah. Are you involved in the Extinction Rebellion also, or how does that? Are many people overlapping there, or?
There's not. I'm sure we try to work with them as a coalition, of course, because we support each other in any climate group and any efforts that they're putting on. But I don't know if there's much overlap with Extinction Rebellion. But Sunrise Movement really they're growing their movement from young people and really with a focus on grassroots organizing in local communities and at the national scale as well.
Yeah, so that a lot of things you can be an ally, you know, just like WILF is a small group, but we're allied in solidarity with many other groups. And I think with the Sunrise Movement, that's what it sounds like.
Makes
yeah.
you strong.
I'm so glad you could share with us some of that history. That's really wonderful. So I missed where it actually started.
It started in Boston, I believe.
Oh,
the
in
first
Boston.
time, yeah. And then took off to the rest of the country. There are a lot of hubs, mostly on the coast, but they're trying to reach out to the Midwest and other regions. And they're doing that specifically by this past summer and into the fall. They're hosting summits, regional summits, where sunrisers from across those regions are gathering in specific cities across the country in different regions it's like a one-day training, and then the second day is an action. And so that's the point of that, is to really build the leadership that the movement needs for us in order to, in 2020, to start coordinating like mass actions of non-compliance to bring more attention to the movement and attention to the climate crisis, so that way we can start treating it the way it needs to be treated. And the Southeast region is actually hosting a summit on the weekend of the 28th. It's in Nashville,
September 28th?
September 28th, yes. So coming up. And then it's right at the end of the week of the global climate strikes, the strike actions. And so that's in Nashville. And Sunrise in the Triangle area is actually getting a bus to take people down to Nashville. We're picking people up in Asheville and Greensboro on the way down there, so.
Great.
Is it Nashville, Tennessee, or
Nashville,
Nashville,
Tennessee.
Nord Carolina?
Nashville, Tennessee, yeah. So
I missed it.
it's a bit far, yeah, but we're
Nashville, Tennessee. I was thinking Nashville.
No.
yeah, it's a great opportunity for anyone to get involved. We're just looking for people that are passionate about organizing, and just any ordinary person, really. You don't have to have experience doing this. You just have to have the motivation to want to be able to take action and use your power to join up with others and get this done. So
That is wonderful. And I think the reason it's spreading so fast, I think the word is getting out. I think people are ready to want to take action because they're been hearing about all this. And the last couple of years, you just have to look at the Weather Channel and just know that there is something unusual going on and that we're in trouble. When you see the ice floes breaking up in the Arctic, and you see the poor Bahama, the worst storm of the century, totally decimated like it's been bombed. You know, the fires in California, all of this is more and more intense and longer and worse than anything we've seen before.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that some of these refugees, whether it's in the Mideast or whether it's in Africa, there are droughts, and that also causes a lot of civil unrest and revolution and people on the move, because you know, and when in India, I think the climate was up to 120 a couple times this year. So things are going in a very scary direction. Liv?
Part of the, when you discuss refugees again, of course, so many times we just think of war in relation to refugees. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because basically we need to redefine the definition of refugee, because currently environmental refugees are not included in the definition of a refugee.
Yeah.
We know that people who are fleeing for their lives from floods and storms.
And drought, where their crops won't grow, and
Right,
that's part of
exactly.
what's happening.
So we
in
know this has
South
happened in
America.
South America already, in Honduras, where there was drought for 5 years, I think.
And people don't mention that, you know, there's a reason that there's violence in those countries, yes, but violence is also exacerbated by lack of food and people fighting for subsistence.
Absolutely, yeah. Even recently with the effects of Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas, they were just absolutely destroyed, and people tried to come. I read an article recently that people tried to come to Florida, but Donald Trump is already saying that he doesn't know if the climate refugees are if they're all good people. He said there might be some bad ones mixed in with them, and of course these people they're seeking refuge for their lives if they stay. They don't have a home. A number of people actually died in the Bahamas, and so Donald Trump's already beginning to make it incredibly racist and blocking people from entering the country even when they have nowhere else to go.
And I heard a comment today on the WCOM on a news show that all these people who are putting their money offshore, the Bahamas was one of the places they put it offshore, along with Panama and all of that. And she's saying, yeah, the bad people, they're not the ones who are the bad people invested their money there, but they're not the ones who need to have help. They just invested their illegal money there to hide it. But the people who are coming are the people who live there who need help. And you know, he's misrepresenting who the bad people are.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have increasing numbers of that, of course. Somaliland in the Horn of Africa has had devastation, drought, and even the UK experienced a significant couple of % drop in their ability to produce food with the weather change.
Really?
So,
The UK?
So America's very fortunate, but I mean, look at the floods in the Midwest and the farmers who weren't able to plant and who stored their corn and all for more than a year. It's going to come to us, but last to us. And we are going to be called upon to help other people. And I think America has demonstrated how we're going to do that by locking children in cages and separating parents. And that's just an incredible viewpoint that we have been demonstrating. And I can't believe it's going to be the viewpoint of the American people forever. That's tragic that we would turn away refugees.
I know.
There will be increasing numbers.
And the real injustice of the climate crisis is that it's these global north countries that have been the ones that have historically been the biggest releasers of emissions and pollutants and contributed the most to the climate crisis. But meanwhile, we can sit comfortably in our lives. I'll attend my university, and then meanwhile, my family's from Mexico. The city's sinking because they're running out of water, and it's just the disparity, because those global south countries have been the ones that have contributed the least historically. The United States has per capita more emissions than any other place on the planet. So
And that
Good point.
our politicians don't wanna talk about, and that's absolutely true in terms of climate justice, and I think Greta addressed that today. You know, the ones who are the most responsible will be affected the least. And the ones who are the least responsible, who have been poor, who have used much fewer emissions in their whole life, they're the ones who are gonna be affected the most by this. And that is so unjust, and that's why it's all the more important that we should be involved and help those who are struggling to survive with what's happening to the planet. Absolutely. Yeah.
I guess we've been even experienced that environmental injustice here with the Rogers Road dump in a neighborhood that is lower income, people of color. That was where we locate the dumping ground. So
It took 40 or more than 40 years to get it out of there. But the fact of the matter is that we're still sending it to the eastern part of the state. It goes to Durham first and gets transferred, but it's going to another poor community. So I'll just mention briefly, that's why it's so important to really go to zero waste in your recycling and your composting, but that's time, we'll have that, another whole show about that. Because a lot of the churches are working on that right now, the Earth Care Ministries in many churches, because that's another big issue about the climate.
Well, I think this was the point that,
It's all connected.
one of the
you know.
points that stood out for me, from what, Gerta was saying, is 30 years, why are we talking about waiting? Somebody says, well, why are you talking about waiting? She goes, I'm sorry, 30 years, we've already been waiting longer than that. And I immediately thought of Rogers Road. They just now got sewer. 40 years they have had no public.
I just got a time signal that we've got about 3 more minutes, so I just want to go over some of these times again. So if you want to, when we take a turn and announce what the climate strike, let's start with the most important for this, on the 20th, time and place. Maybe Emily?
So the worldwide climate strike,
Worldwide, folks.
yes, is going to, the local representation of that will be at Halifax Mall in Raleigh, beginning at 12:30 on September 20th. And it will be 12:30 to about 3:30.
And that's worldwide, she's talking about 117 countries and more than
2,500 events.
2,500
Events.
different events all over the world.
Millions of people.
Millions of people, they marched for peace before we went to Iraq and trying to stop that war. And let's hope that this is even more successful than that, definitely.
And led by young people.
And a lot of young people will be coming, yes. So that's the main thing to come away from this show. And then in terms of the UNC campus, earlier that morning, of that same morning, on the 20th at 10:30.
Yeah, so on UNC's campus, we're hosting a walkout for clean air on campus. 10:30 in the morning, we're gathering on the steps of Wilson Library and in Polk Place to really call attention to the coal burning power plant on campus and to get the university administration to do something about that. And also more information on any of these events that I've spoken about specific to Sunrise Movement, you can find on our Facebook page. It's Sunrise Triangle Area.
Okay, and what about I think you had some websites for the climate strike. Is there a place people could look up?
Websites. Remember there on the 23rd in Roanoke, Virginia, there is a rally, and you can go to www.cwfnc.org. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Slowly up.
www.cwfnc.org.
Clean Water for North Carolina.
Clean Water for North
And
Carolina,
if
those
you
are
are
the initials.
already subscribed to frack-free updates, it will be in the frack-free update as well.
Frack-free NC.
Frack-free NC.
And I just want to mention that we've been talking to Emily Keel, Liv Hutchby, and Sammy,
Quiroz-Gutierrez.
say it again.
Quiroz-Gutierrez.
Okay,
Yeah.
you say it well.
Thank you. That's not even a secret saying.
And I'm Lori Hoyt, the interviewer, and Emily O'Hare is doing the camera, and Ira Schwitzer is doing the board and making sure that we are not only on this program, but all the other programs we've talked about